Kahani Bar brings you a cocktail of stories, both in English and Hindi. I am Richa, and today's story is from our segment Waking Dreams by Neerja K. This collection of short stories was born somewhere between truth and the unknown, between dreams and waking up. Our story for the day is Causeway. I woke up with a pleasant feeling, felt no pain in my brain and no ache in my heart, as if intoxicated. At last he had come for me. He stood by my bedside and I looked up at him with accusing eyes. But he just smiled back at me. That smile of his always melted my heart and all my anger as always vanished. He offered his hand and I held it with full faith and trust. I had complete belief that he had come for me and would take me along wherever he had been for all this while. He held my hand and I rose from my bed. He led me and I followed as we both started to walk. My feet were light and my heart was soaring, and I walked with him hand in hand in a trance. We walked through the house, out through the door, and out into the garden. We kept walking through the garden that was so familiar. The path through the garden was strewn with some familiar white blossoms, and we were trying not to trample over the fallen flowers. We walked in silence as we had done so often in the past. We rarely needed words to converse. Just being together, walking together hand in hand was blissful. Always. I felt so light in my body and mind that I was sure I could fly if I tried. So we walked without any hurry, as if neither of us wanted to reach our destination. We walked through the garden gates, into the woods, then through the woods down to the mountain stream. There we sat on a rock by the stream, dangling our feet over the edge of the rock till the gurgling cold water tickled our toes. The soft morning sun rays were dancing on the water, and we watched in silence, soaking in the beauty of the nature and the joy of being together once more. It was simply blissful. He put his arm around my shoulder and held me firmly. I had so many questions for him. Why had he left? Why so suddenly? Why without saying a goodbye? Why had he left without leaving a kiss on my lips? Why? Why, for God's sake? Why had he taken a decade to return? Why? 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 There were so many questions he needed to answer. He looked at me and I knew that he could read all the questions in my eyes. He said not a word, just smiled and held my gaze. And suddenly I needed no answers. The fact that he was back was enough for me. I didn't care for anything else anymore. Once again, I felt complete. What could be better than he being by my side with his arm around my shoulder? Nothing in the world meant anything to me than this moment. I had waited a full decade for this moment, and I was not going to lose it to any explanations. I just didn't need any now that he was here. The air was heavy with fragrance of the spring blooms. I wanted to hold that moment forever, but deep in my heart, I knew the spell would break. Though he did not speak, my thoughts were his too. He gave me that look. You still can read my mind. I smiled back in affirmation. He gripped my hand tighter, turned my face towards him, and gently planted a kiss on my forehead, and then he rose. My heart was gripped with panic. No, you're not leaving. Not again, I wanted to say. No, I wanted to yell, but I couldn't find my voice. A deep chill filled my heart, but a sliver of hope rose somewhere in the dark chill. Maybe he's come to take me with him? He started to walk and I held his hand and walked with him. We were now standing in a strange forest by a riverside. The water was blue, peaceful, and calm. It seemed it was not moving, but still, yet I knew it was flowing. The forest ran along the river on both the banks. Morning mist rose from the water surface and moved lazily skyward. Gradually, the mist thickened and weaved its way through the trees, engulfing the forest ever so slowly but surely. I was certain that the forest on the other bank would soon vanish. He left my hand and started walking down the bank towards the water. I started to follow him, but he asked me to stop with a movement of his hand. My feet froze midway and I stopped there and was not able to move. He had cast some kind of spell on me with that slight movement of his hand, and I was rooted. I wanted to tell him, I'm no longer scared of water. I have overcome my hydrophobia. I can even swim now. But I could not move, and I could not find my voice or words. I was, it seemed, frozen and entrapped in my own aura. Now I could see him wading through the peaceful water. No, wait a minute. It seemed that he was gliding over the water surface. How could it be? I knew in his profession they were trained in many humanly impossible skills. But this? Where had he learned this? Or am I going crazy? As I said, I was rooted to the ground, unable to move, as if my body had turned into stone. He went on without looking back. He went on wading through the water or sailing over it. I could not tell. And then he was on the other bank. He turned to me as if saying, Look, what all we can do in this unclaimed territory. The smile on his face was now shadowed by a heavy gloom, and sadness crept in those intense eyes. My heart bled. I suddenly heard him whisper in my ears, as if he was standing right behind me. But I could see that he was standing across the river, wrapped in the thin mist. What games was my mind playing with me? He whispered, Darling, I can't take you with me yet. You know, don't you? The orders come from above, and the orders have not come yet. Someday I will come for you, but today is not the day. I do not have the orders yet. Damn the orders! I wanted to yell, but I was unable to. I wanted to curse the authorities and the systems that sucked, but I could not utter a word. I saw him suddenly waving a goodbye. Pain had wiped off the smile from his face completely. He turned his back on me and started to walk away, through the mist, into the world till everything got lost in a thick blanket of mist. And I could see him no more. I was drenched in gloom. The pain in my brain returned with full intensity, and my heart ached as if some cold iron hand had gripped it in its strong fist. My knees melted and I sank to the ground, heavy under the burden of grief, yet not able to scream. I just sat there like a helpless wreck. I don't remember how long I sat there. I could not believe that he had come after a decade and just left without any explanation or justification for his absence. I was drenched in misery. My numb mind was wrestling to find answers to so many questions, and it left me drowned in an ocean of eternal hopelessness. Does he want me to just wait for him another decade by this riverside? This question popped in my brain, and with that question, a sudden surge of anger rose within me, from my toes to my scalp, as if pumping energy in me. Angry energy oozed from every cell of my body. This was not fair at all. There was immense anger, but not enough to wash my grief away. Somewhere deep in my heart, I knew that it was not his fault. He too did not want to leave, but he seemed to be governed by some unknown force. I got up and with a heavy heart started to walk back to the house. There was no spring in my step and no joy in my heart. My feet were heavy. Each step was an effort. But I had to keep walking, so I kept walking back alone and with every step hoping that he would appear quietly and hold my hand and walk me home. But no such thing happened. I dragged myself to my doorstep and rang the bell. No one opened the door because there was no one to open the door. There was no one waiting for me at home. There must be someone. I rang the bell again. The doorbell rang loud and shrill. I was in my bed. My feet found my slippers and my body waded through the house while my being was still in that mystic place. I opened the door for my housekeeper and waded back to my room. I looked at my watch and the date hit me. 14th of July. Exactly a decade back on this date, my soulmate had left me and crossed over, leaving me behind. Madhuri, my housekeeper following me, asked, "Didi, have you been out in the garden in your house shoes?" I looked down at my feet and to my surprise, my house slippers were indeed drenched in mud and dry leaves from the garden. That is when I wondered, had I been in a dream? If yes, then what can explain my soiled slippers? Or is there actually a causeway between the two worlds? Here and beyond? Like the no man's land between two countries? Where we could meet from time to time? Had I just returned from there? This is Richa signing off. Take good care of yourselves till I'm back with the next story.